Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Writer's Realm podcast, and thanks for joining us on the epic adventure we call writing. We're your hosts,
Austin Matthews.
and Bob Dado, and Holly couldn't make it today, but she'll join us next time. And today I have a special guest. We're going to be talking about writing different point of views with E.L. Canney, also known as Erica. Hi, Erica.
Hello.
Well, what are you all about? Tell us all about yourself.
My name's Erica. Some people don't know that. I do have my pen name as E.L. Canney. But I actually write new adult romantasy books. My debut novel came out August of 2024. Since then, I've sold about 17,000 copies, so done pretty well for myself so far, just getting started. But I am in the process of writing the next book in the series. But before I get too far in the weeds, so my debut novel is called Oath of Embers. It is a Viking-inspired new adult romantasy. It has a lot of our delicious tropes that we know and love, like enemies to lovers, found family, feminine rage, touch her, him, and unalive vibes. Very morally gray, unhinged characters. They're all adult characters too. I wanted to write a book that didn't start out with like the chosen one who's 19 years old and has no skills to begin with, which we all know and love those books.
Yeah.
But for mine, I wanted to start out with a female main character that was actually really fierce and strong from the beginning, but obviously has like her downfalls and weaknesses that she's still growing throughout the book. So she has room for her character to develop. But essentially, the premise of the book is this main female character is a huntress in her village. There are rival clans who are trying to win the rule of the realm, and they later find out that she is like the weapon that can essentially turn the tides on who is going to rule. And so they basically capture her, claim her. They take her it's called the Black Fortress Mountains of the Varanguards. And they basically try to indoctrinate her to become one of them. And she basically like decides, I'll play along. Like if it saves the people that I love and care about, I'll go along with this. And she decides that she wants to take them down from the inside out. So she's like, I'm not only going to learn how to become you, I'm going to be the best one out of all of you. And then I'm going to take you down. So that's kind of the premise of the story. It's very like fast paced, action packed. Obviously, there's romance in there. She starts to have feelings for the general leader of the clan, and obviously that's a problem for her. She's like, this is not okay. So I have like a shadow daddy in there. She has powers that are more elemental, like with fire and everything. So there's animals we can speak mind to mind to. There's all kinds of fun, exciting characters in the book, and a lot of my readers have really resonated with that. So
Okay. And I have to back you up. Shadow Daddy, what is that?
do you not know shadow daddies?
I am so sorry for being ignorant.
His mind is going to like 10 different places right now.
Yeah, I'm afraid to Google that. It's going to set some alarms off.
Have you heard of Akatar by Sarah J. Maas? A Court of Thorns and Roses.
Yeah, yes, I have. Oh, yeah.
Well, if you haven't read it, essentially it's kind of like a booming trope to have in a lot of romantasy books right now. Basically, they have the power over shadows and darkness, and everyone kind of has their own take on it. Not everyone wields shadows exactly the same, but they also have like so they can move through their shadows. It makes them very stealthy, and then like my character Kaylin, who has those powers, he also can control air to an extent, as in like he can steal the breath from your lungs and make you start to be able to breathe.
Yeah.
So there's different. It's pretty intense. It's meant to be like dark, dangerous, mysterious, kind of like sexy in a way. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's just such a fun, like when you're talking about manipulating an element, like Shadow is a really fun one. Like I have a character that does that too, but like his big thing that he did was he ripped his shadow self out of himself. So it's like his negative like things, and he gives it a whole body and stuff. And so he has it go do all these things for him as his like servant.
That's so cool. I love that take on it.
It's a twist on Peter Pan when he's trying to chase his shadow around.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is crazy. Here's this crazy thing. I did not know what Shadow Daddy was, and now that you're explaining it, I'm like, how do our writer brains work? Because I'm putting together a fantasy that does have now the bad guy slash love interest is from the shadow realm, is like from the undead realm, you know,
Yeah.
and I'm going to have the hero and him get together. And I'm thinking, like, I didn't know what that was, but I'm creating it apparently. Wow.
I mean, it's just so appealing. It's, you know,
Yeah,
it's
how
like
can we
parallel
not?
evolution.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And they start out like, this character that you want to redeem, right? Because they start out with like these evil intentions. They have, they've done some dark, dark things, they have a past, that kind of deal. But you almost end up rooting for them at the end, which is kind of like part of the development of like,
Mhm.
this bad, dangerous dude. And then now you get to a point where you're like, I actually want him to win. I need him to, succeed.
Nice. All right, Erica, where can we find you? Where can our listeners find you?
Yeah, so I am fairly active on TikTok more than anything else. However, I do also have Instagram. If you literally put at Canney in any platform, that's where you're gonna find me if I'm on there. So that's not too hard to look me up. But if you also go to my link tree on my Instagram or TikTok, that's always going to be linked in my profile. It has all my other links, like to my website, my Amazon listing for my book. I do sell them directly, so if you wanted a signed copy, you could go to my website. If you just want to get a copy on Amazon, it's like a couple bucks cheaper, then you can do that as well. I have paperback, hardback, and ebook
Mm-hmm.
copies. And you can also pre-order book 2 right now. So the premise of the series is called The Eternal Oaths. So each book, so Oath of Embers is the first one. The second one is Oath of Starlight. The third one, name pending. I've been affectionately calling it Oath of Enchantments, but I'm not going to keep that. The first 3 books in this series are essentially the origin stories of my main female characters, at which point they all end up in the same place at the end of their books. So then book 4 picks up from that point in time, and then they kind of have to deal with all their problems that they came to the table with, and that's how the series is structured. So book 2 you can pre-order. I'm about to also publish the novella for Oath of Embers, which you don't have to read, obviously, but it does give you a lot of background to the main characters, like
Mhm.
parents and how she came to be with her power and all that good stuff. So
Okay, you said the book title is the one that's out on Amazon right now.
Oath of Embers.
Oath of Embers. Okay, perfect. That sounds amazing. This I have got to pick this up. And I have to mention, like, you've already sold 17,000 copies of Oath of Embers. That
Yep.
is brilliant marketing. It's probably Book Talk you're doing that on. Did it
Oh
blow
yeah,
up?
book talk peeps. We're close knit. We love each other.
My gosh, that's amazing. So
I do have a
that's
lot of book events that I've been going to as well.
okay.
That has definitely helped with my sales. And then I have a few coming up in 2025. So again, if you go to my link tree on my website, I have every event that I'm going to be at. So
Right.
it's mostly southeastern region, but I'll be in like Nashville, Savannah, Georgia, Knoxville, Tennessee. So I'll be in a few different places. Charleston, South Carolina, I'll be in there as well. So if anyone wanted to look up certain book events that they wanted to go to, it's not just me, but a bunch of other authors, both
Right.
indie and traditional, though I'll be at those events.
Okay. Now, are there romantasy book events, specifically romantasy, do you think, or is
There
that a
are
thing?
some. The one that I'm going to in Charleston, it's called like Lit Romance in the Low Country or something like that.
Hmm.
Um, so it's not necessarily all romantasy, but there are most likely some element in fantasy. So if it's like a dark fantasy or romantasy or just,
Mhm.
sci-fi fantasy type thing, it's not necessarily all romantasy, but definitely going to be a big part of the events.
Yeah, you got to get your paranormal romances in there too. So
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there's probably like a tight knit circle or a corner, right, for the werewolf shifters, you know.
Yeah, that's definitely its own niche.
Yeah, and there's always going to be readers for that. So
yeah,
sometimes you get people going, I don't know if somebody's going to read this. Like, oh my, are you serious? Yes, of
Love a
course they're
good
going to read
like
that.
Alpha versus Luna relationship trying to figure
Yeah,
out.
yeah. All right, well, let's get into our topic, which is writing different POVs. Now, you, Erica, as Romantasy, and you've listed your Shadow Daddy, you've listed magic animals,
Yes,
and so I'm figuring you probably do have different point of views, right?
I do.
So how do you So where do we start? We're reading your book. We're reading Oath of Embers. So where would we start, and where does it go to with POVs?
Sure. So we start, everything in my book is written third person point of view, but like omnipresent. So essentially, what that means for anyone who's not sure, you're basically having a narrator who's explaining what's happening in the story, but they have enough insight into the characters that they understand like their feelings and their thoughts, and they can kind of give inflections. So while it's still from Seraphina's third person point of view, so you're kind of following her primarily, there are moments where I call out that you've officially shifted to Kalen, which is the main male character, and he's kind of explaining what's going on in his point of view, but still third person. So you kind of have to read it to fully understand how all of that works, if you're not familiar with that. But basically, there are moments where Seraphina is just not around, but there are things that are happening in the story that the reader needs to know about. So that's kind of where I started. I actually, funny story on that though. When I first started writing Oath of Embers, like almost 2 years ago now, I started 30% of the book in first person. I wrote a lot of it in first person, but the further I got into the story, I just did not feel like first person was doing it justice, because I wanted to be able to give the reader more information about what was going on and kind of everything in each scene versus just Seraphina, which is my main character. So I ended up rewriting the whole first 30% of the book and then continued it in third person omnipresent.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think that's a good exercise is every once in a while just test like, does this work better from a different perspective, from this other POV? Or even like I've seen a couple of people when writing first person being like calling out those things that that person wasn't aware of, be like, at the time I didn't know, or whatever like that, where it's like, you can still get that dramatic tension or whatever, but it's a little bit more complicated, obviously, in first person.
Yeah.
So I don't read a lot of romanticy. Now, is this normal for like a Song of Ice and... No, that wasn't it. A Song of Ice and Fire is not. What is not romanticy?
I mean,
sorry.
Like, I have a lot of books, but I don't know if that one's on my shelf.
That was
I mean, there's some spice in there.
Yeah, well, it's a little different. It's a little twisted.
It's very different.
It's very relational, but anyway, so is romanticy usually set in third person?
It's actually typically not. That's actually normally it is first person. And that's why I started writing in first person, to be honest, because that was also kind of what I was used to in a lot of the books I was reading. But I don't know, just when I started writing the story, I felt like I had so much more to tell the reader to really immerse them in the world and the character development. So yeah, it was an experiment. And then when I got in the flow of third person, it just felt right. And I could explain so much more of what was happening in the story than I felt equipped enough to do in first person.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think too, like if you're going to be switching POVs, like between different characters, I don't know that I've ever seen it like have a first person POV and then switch to a different person. Like, actually maybe Red Rising might be like that series might do it. But it throws you off so much to be like, whose head am I in again?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, you know what? Because when you're speaking, Erica, about this, about right between the female male lead characters, my head went to... I read a lot of old Agatha Christie, and not old, but it's just, it's from back in the day. And even like Lord of the Rings, I was thinking like he's all over the place. Like with POVs, and although it's not confusing so much, but you're in somebody's different head every paragraph almost. You know what I mean? Like it's crazy. I don't know how they did that. Very confusing.
Well, because like I think that's going the full third person omniscient as opposed to like I think it's become more popular to do third person limited. Yeah. In more recent decades, to where it's like I'm following this specific character. I only know, like, I'm not that character, but I only know what that character would know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. So, Erica, is this your first book you've written, or have you written other stuff? I mean, you sound very well versed in writing and putting your books together, so you have to have written some other stuff.
Yeah, this is the only thing I've published. I will say that. creative writing has kind of been my outlet, my side hobby, if you will, throughout my whole life. Like English was my favorite subject in school. I had teachers, especially like creative writing classes, I would write a lot of short stories. And I had teachers being like, "Can you write more? Like, you left us on this cliffhanger. You can't do this." Like,
Yeah.
and I still have some of those, my mom keeps a lot of that kind of stuff, like little,
Hmm.
projects or things that I would have submitted, poems I wrote. But yeah, writing has been a part of my life always. And honestly, I'm kind of surprised myself that it took me this long to actually publish something
Yeah.
because I so much. But this story was just so inspiring for me, and like the development that my characters go through, and the story. And I just felt I had to share it. I loved it so much. I was just like, other people would love this story, so why wouldn't I share it with them?
Yeah. Well, it
Hmm.
sounds like you're right. Like, I mean, you're off to a
Yeah.
great start. Yeah, that's fantastic. And no, I'm with you because I was like 48 when I was like, you know what, I should really get down to like figuring out how to write like professionally for for someone to like it and to actually buy the book.
Yeah.
What kind of preparation did you do? I mean, because it sounds like the same as what I did. I used to write for myself constantly. Just I'm bored. I'm going to write myself a story. So what did you do to like, okay, if I want to sell this, what are the steps? Even though this is not a writing topic, but who cares? I'm just curious.
It's kind of a writer topic. It's an author to
Sure.
writer to author,
Yeah.
topic. No, that's a great question. Honestly, it came down to like I was having some big emotions, some big life changes, and I started writing the story, which is typically when I get most inspired, is when a lot of different pieces of life are happening. And so as I was writing the story and having the thoughts of like, I really should share this, this would be a really great story for other people to read. I started doing my research, what would it take to become traditionally published? What is it to be an indie author? Pros, cons, weighing all those things. And I'm just kind of an impatient person in general. So I was like, I'm just going to do it myself. Like, why would I wait on someone else to love a story that I know is great? So that's what I did. I was like, well, let's just figure this out. So I started following other indie authors on social media. I started doing some more research online, figuring out that Amazon obviously was like a really great platform to get started out, especially if you're a new, just kind of breaking out into writing. So I did all of that. I published on Amazon. It's not for the faint of heart. You do have to treat it like a business. I think that's something a lot of people don't realize. Like, it's not just about writing your book, it's about branding and marketing and,
Hmm.
almost like having your own mission statement and being consistent and ruthless and have grit and be like, okay, even when some people don't like this book, that's okay. It's not for them. It's
Hmm.
meant for the people who are going to enjoy it. Like, there's a lot of things that you go through as an author, especially first starting out, good, bad, the ugly. But it's worth it. I would do it 1,000 times over.
Hmm. Nice. Oh, so you're already indie published. That was another question I wanted to ask. Sounds like it.
Yes, Oath of
Yeah.
Embers published in August last year.
Nice. Okay. Wow. Another question I have all kinds of questions for you. You said Viking. So Viking is obviously fact historical stuff. So is it like historical slash fantasy, or
It's Viking inspired, which is a
Okay.
very key moniker there.
yeah.
It is not about Vikings meant to be like a historical fantasy. It is literally pieces of Viking culture that I really loved that I added into my story. And a lot of people have that confusion. So I'm glad you asked that.
Hmm.
It really is, it's like the ruthlessness of it, clans, chieftains, a lot of that verbiage, some of the things that they wear. My main character has like an axe as her main weapon, like that kind of stuff. So it's like pieces of Viking culture added into the story to give it a little
Hmm.
bit more of a relevance, I guess. And also it helps to be able to say that because people really like they understand what that means, right? They're
Yeah.
like, okay, I can envision
Right.
what these people are doing and their villages and their lifestyle and the rituals that they have and things like that. So it's very closely tied to Viking culture. Is it accurately historically? Absolutely not.
Yeah, once you get into historical stuff, it gets really complicated. I have one series that is like historical fantasy and is in the same time period. So it's like 10th century Vikings as they settled in like the Ukrainian region. And like the
Yeah.
amount of research you have to do is just
Yeah.
It's painful.
Yeah.
And I'm not that detail oriented, so I'm not trying to have people come at me and be like, "That's not accurate." I'd be like, "It's
Right.
not supposed to be."
Yeah. No, so the one grace I give myself is it is historical, like eldritch horror. So like, it doesn't have to be 100%
Yeah.
accurate. There's not
Right.
giant monsters walking
Yeah.
around, so it's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, and then my books are I started as historical fantasy, but I quickly learned like there's not a whole lot of market for historical fantasy, so I switched it to steampunk, which it kind of is. And so it takes place in San Francisco and 1890s. So, but I do look at old maps. I was studying old San Francisco from that time period to see where everything was. Apparently there's a giant graveyard right in the middle of the city that's obviously no longer there. Plot twist: there are definitely bodies where.
Oh yeah, I mean it's
they just
total thing. You didn't move the bodies.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, all the headstones are gone. We get it, but like all those bodies are still there.
That's too much work. They didn't do that.
Yeah, let's just build over that. Why would we do that?
Yeah.
We don't want that bad juju, anyways. Digging up
No. Yeah. Yeah. So I am one of those people that if it is historical or something like that, then I like the work that somebody would put into it. Because like since I'm a retired police officer, I'll read books that have cops in it, and they'll use the gun the wrong way, or I'm just like, what the heck? I mean, just Google it, okay? If you don't know, just please don't do that. But anyway,
Yeah, I'll just ask you, Bob. It's fine.
just ask me. Just ask me.
Yeah.
I know how it works. Okay.
No, the little bit of research that I did, funny enough, because this is a show that my husband and I both love to watch together. I watched a lot of Forged in Fire episodes because I
Oh
wanted to
yeah.
learn all the different weapons
Right.
from different eras, and that wasn't just for my first book. This is for all the books because they all have different realms that they're set in, so completely different worlds for the first three.
Right.
Um, so yeah, like I have sais in my second book, axes and different kind of like
Yeah.
by that and Oath of Embers. And then the third one, you said steampunk. My third book is set in like a high fantasy slash steampunk world. So like
Nice.
part of the realm is this capital that is, it has steampunk vibes, but it's very so much fantasy. There's like enchantments and zeppelins and all that kind of stuff. And then the other part of the world of the realm is an enchanted forest.
Mm.
So it's got a bit of both.
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna be a unique story for sure. I'm loving writing it. I can't wait
Nice.
till the third one's done. I think I'm more excited about the third book. I'm just
That's fair.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Forged in Fire, just for our listeners, that is the one show. It's kind of like a game show where they make weapons, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, like they have the contestants.
Competition.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a competition. Yeah, hey, and they're all like metalsmiths. Make a
It's
broadsword, make a,
Yeah. Great British Bake Off, but for weapons.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and it is
They give
so
you-
cool, definitely.
Yeah, they give you like the historical significance of some of the weapons they're making and who used them and why. Like it's actually really educational and
Mhm.
entertaining.
Nice, yeah. How about the show Vikings? Or any movies, or were you
Like
into
Valhalla
anything?
or anything
Right,
like that.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I watch a lot of those casually, but again, it wasn't meant to be. Oath of Embers wasn't meant to be strictly about Vikings, so I
Okay.
just took kind of some elements that I already knew or had seen in different shows and movies and stuff, and just kind of added it in there. Did a little research on a couple of things, especially when it came to the axe. But other than that, no, pretty just off the cuff. I'm definitely like a pantser too when I'm writing. I'm just
Oh.
kind of like fly by the seat of my pants. The story develops.
Right
as I
on.
I have a
You're
general
one of
outline
us.
of everything goes, but always like beginning, middle, and end. I gotta at least know where I'm going in general, but yeah, I like letting the characters tell me what they want to happen in the story.
How fun is that? Um, so different point of views. How about you have magic animals in there, but we keep it. Do we ever get into their heads too?
We don't get into their heads as far as like a strict point of view, but there are moments where kind of like the main male character, he has this wolf companion, but he's huge. He's basically taller than the people are, and he is what I call a sonic warg. and he can choose who he wants to project his thoughts into, and he opens the doorway for them to be able to communicate back in their heads. So you get insight into what he's thinking as far as like in communication and talking with the characters, and you obviously have like an italicized, here's what's going on in their heads. They're not saying this out loud, you know how you format that in the book.
Right.
So yeah, not his point of view necessarily, but you do get to like hear their thoughts and communicate with them in a way that isn't truly speaking to each other.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So all of your books are going to be third person omniscient. So what would we say for someone like a beginning writer? Because that's kind of what our, not a theme, but like we're kind of geared towards new writers, just like me. Like we're, you know, yeah, we're starting out and we're like, well, how the heck do I write? So let's say somebody does want to write first person, and then they want to switch that up because they can't. It's really difficult to write first person through the entire book.
Yeah.
So we get that one, you know, the main hero POV, and then how would they be able to successfully introduce other characters with a different POV?
I think first person point of view is unique in that you do get a really great insight into what that character specifically is really thinking and feeling. And, you know, you do get a full sense of, I am this person. It makes it a lot easier when you're reading, especially for those who have a very visual, when they're reading, have a very visualized, you know, they're immersed in the world. They kind of see themselves as the character. I think it's why first person is so popular. But yeah, when you switch point of view from first person with different characters, it's maybe a little bit harder because you're thinking, I've been visualizing myself as this one character. How do I go and how can I, you know, I'm not the next character, but I'm getting that point of view. I think if you do it with maybe just the main characters, if you do it with the main female and the main male or whatever, you know, the main characters are, and just keep it to especially specifically to that, then it's a lot easier to do than if you're trying to switch to like the whole found family, right? And you're trying to bounce between, you know, 5, 6
Yeah.
different characters, the way to put it. Then it starts to get a little bit chaotic.
Yeah.
So I would suggest if someone is going to write in first person point of view, but they need to kind of give a little bit more information what's happening with the main characters, then I would just stick to those two. And I would even have fun with it, like when you're formatting and your chapter art and stuff like that. Make your chapter art different per, you know, if it's the main character, you know, number one or main character appointed, you know, number two, and have fun with it and make it exciting. Like it's a journey as you're going through each point of view versus just, oh, it's Sam versus, you know, Caitlin and here it is. And, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think too, like especially when you're talking about the like self-published space, you can get really creative with it. So like one thing I'm working on is like a monster of the week kind of a thing, and it's like you've got 3 main characters, and one of them is like giving reports, like this is like my very cut and dry, this is what happened, like have it like on a form, like this is exactly what happened. The next character is like narrative, and the other person's like doodling on top of it, and so just have that as like the 3 different perspectives.
I love that.
Yeah, and, you know, I have read other books where each chapter will have the character's name, right? Like chapter 3, Bob, and like, oh, okay, we're going to be in Bob's head now. You know, that's something that can help.
Yeah, and even doing, like whether you're doing first person or third person and switching between perspectives, I think that can be super helpful so that you're like either picking up on it or like use the name within the first like couple of, you know, words. So it's like, oh,
right,
I know whose perspective I'm taking right now.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's something I did not realize. Like, for some reason, I thought, oh, it'd be fun to make the reader guess. No, it makes them extremely frustrated. Is like, who the heck is doing this right now? Yeah, like I'd write in a whole paragraph, and then I would, oh, and so this is the person. Like, you're right.
I
like,
mean,
start off immediately.
To be fair, the thing I'm giving to the writing group, it's the last word in the entire chapter that says whose perspective it was, technically, since they're all letters.
Oh, okay.
So,
nice.
But I mean, I don't think there's been a whole lot of confusion. It's like, or if you're curious, you can just like flip down and look. It's like, oh, this was from X character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have we read anything where it was first person from different characters? I don't know if I've ever read that before.
So I was like I had to double check. I did just Google it really quick, and Red Rising does switch between characters and is all first person. And so it's like you'll be in like Lysander's perspective, and then you'll go to Darrow's perspective, but they're all in first person. And it's like, okay, I just have to remind myself, like, oh, this is who I am following right now.
Okay. So they're all first person though. That's
the only one I've seen like that, because it was really off-putting at first. So
yeah, I don't know if I'd get exhausted with that. Jim Butcher does something similar, not necessarily, with his Dresden Files books. When he writes his main character, that's first person, and then when we jump into other characters, now it's third person, limited.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I haven't read that yet. I should probably. I hear all over the gambit about whether I should or shouldn't read it. So
no, you should. They're very entertaining. Storm Rising, I think, is his first one. I think. Forgive me. Please don't sue me if I got that wrong. Anyway, I read most of his books. Yeah, I think they're a lot.
Well, I'll give it a try.
Yeah, urban fantasy wizard.
That sounds interesting.
Yeah. I mean, he's a million bookseller, so he did something right.
Famous. Yeah, I think the main criticism I ever hear is that like the main character isn't likable, but that's like part of the point is that he's not likable at first. So it just is hard to be in first person if it's a not likable character, I think.
Yeah, that's
I hear he grows a lot. So
yeah, he's got like 15 books or something like that. So
well, then hopefully the main character grows over 15 books.
I was like, there has to be some kind of character development. You can't love everyone in the beginning and then continue to love them throughout. That's kind of the point. You almost want to love to hate them at some point. That's what gives it a little bit more dynamic.
Yeah. So your villain, Erica. I mean, is it a villain or is it more like just an antagonist, like a force or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely a villain. Like when I say enemies to lovers, it's like back throats vibes. Like they're on the verge of unaliving each other constantly.
Yeah.
Up until obviously a certain point, he's constantly threatening and doing some unhinged, very morally gray / black things. But so is she. Like they're both and that was kind of the part of the Viking vibe of it too. They're just ruthless, and like their mantra is literally be strong, be swift, be ruthless. That's what they say in training. Because they're like there's no second chances in their world. It's just do or die. So it's pretty intense as far as that goes. But obviously, at some point, you love to hate him, and you start to fall in love with this character. And then there are some big plot twists at the end that tell you a lot about the reasons why he is the way that he is. That completely destroy the female main character's world. She's just like, are you kidding me? Didn't know any of this. Like, so big reveals at the end too that you're just like, and it's so funny to some of my readers who've reached out to me afterwards. They're like, how could you do this to us? Like, what are you doing? They love it, and they're like, where is book 2? I need to know now. And I'm like, well, you'll have to wait till book 4 to figure out what happens. So then
Joyce.
Yeah. Sorry, not sorry.
Yeah. Here's a tangent question. How many books are you writing in this series?
I have 4 planned. Since book 4 right now is still just an outline, but the first 3 are for the most part written. I don't know if it'll finish in book 4. I might need a 5th, but it won't be any longer than that. I'm not trying to write 20 books in one series. It's just not.
Okay.
But I have plans for another series that I am already outlining.
Yes. Can you tell us about that?
Are they going to be connected at all, or?
Oh, same universe?
Potentially. So my thoughts are, it's almost like a multiverse type deals, I think, where I'm headed. But they'll still be like standalone series, but maybe some crossover, down the road. But this next series that I'm writing, the best way for me to describe it, it's like ancient Egypt meets Treasure Planet.
Ooh, wow.
If that gives you any kind of vibe. So it's
amazing.
It's like dark, sandy realm, very dry. There's a lot of like, there's artifacts, there's rituals, there's, old gods, and there's all kinds of lore that goes with the history of the realm, but also some steampunk elements, some like like steampunk space, I guess. I don't know however you describe Treasure Planet.
Right.
It's kind of the best way to put that in there. So there's gonna be portals between just be bopping around in the realm and stuff like that. But they'll also have like jewelry and artifacts and different things that they use that help them achieve certain things. And as they collect more artifacts, it kind of helps their power grow or stabilize it. Um, the running title right now for it is called Twin Flames. The premise behind it is the main characters, male, female characters, are basically twin flames. And describing what that is essentially they're tied to the lifeline of the realm. It's the celestial flame, and they're meant to be guardians of it, but they were torn apart and broken in time a long time ago. And so they're just now like fate is bringing them back together, and you can imagine a lot of the chaos that kind of ensues with all of that. So
Oh my gosh. I'm ready to buy all of your whatever you're gonna write. Just put me on your list. I have a book coming out next Tuesday.
pre-order list.
Yeah, it's already pre-ordered. It's automatically pre-ordered. All of these sound amazing. So what about POVs in that series? Are you gonna keep it third person?
I think I'm gonna keep it third person omnipresent. I really, really resonate with that, and it served me well in my first series, so I don't see why I'd steer from that. I know some authors will dabble in a few, even within a series. But I think for me, I'm going to stick with that. But there will be different points of view. I try to always have the two main characters have some point of view because I like the readers to have a little bit more insight and understanding in their motivations and what they're doing and how they're feeling throughout the story. But also kind of tease them and get the readers a little confused of like, wait a second, why was he thinking this at this time? He's thinking this. And it also, I think, develops the mystery and the intrigue of what I'm trying to set them up for as the plot twists, are coming.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a fun thing to play around with. I don't know what got me started on it, but I think it was something we talked about on the podcast. And so I started writing a second person story. And so it's second person omniscient. And so it's like this person telling a story to another person being like, hey, this is what you did, as if it was him. And so it's just like trying to explain himself to somebody else. So it's just
sounds like Inception to me. It sounds like
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's weird, but it's been a good exercise of like, okay, get me completely out of my comfort zone, write something I've never written before. And so like I think that's something that people should try is like, hey, if you always write one perspective or like the main character's POV, try switching it up and doing that. So
yeah,
that's
a
little more
good advice. Yeah, and I think you grow too. Like Erica, you're talking about. Well, I started writing first person, and then I was like, I don't know if this is working for me, right? And you can always, yeah, you can. And how much you said you got a third of the book done?
Yeah,
before you did that, yeah,
wrote quite a bit in first person, and I kept hitting these little roadblocks too in first person that I just was like, I'll try and write around this and fix this, whatever, blah, blah. And I finally got to the point where I was like, I literally can't write another word until I go back and fix this. I have to change it. It's tedious and frustrating, and I was mad at myself. Like, why am I making all this extra work for myself? But I'm so glad that I did it because I think the story resonates so much better than when I was first writing it.
Yeah. That's, I think when people talk about writer's block, that's the only thing I can think of. I don't honestly, I don't know if I've ever had writer's block except for that point you've made, Erica, is when you stop being like, you're just getting frustrated. Like, and I don't know why, I'll just like, what is something? So immediately, like, okay, something's not working. Well, what is it? What is it? The plot? Is it the dialogue? What is not making me move forward? So that's a great pivot point to just stop yourself and go, maybe this whole first person thing isn't working. Or if you're on the other side, you're writing third person and you're just not having fun. You're just so used to reading, first person. So you're like, let me just go try that. So please do, right? Yeah. Like you don't have to this is your creation. So you need to, and you have to be passionate about it because, the meme is write what you want, write the book you want. Yeah. Because you're going to read it like 500 times. So, like, you have got to make sure. Yeah. And I liked, Erica, how you're so excited about these upcoming books. Like, we, as a reader, we can tell, right, when the author was excited or when they're bored. And I hate it when it's the climax and I'm like, dude, this author he checked out. Like, last because, like, this is so flippin' boring, man. Like, and it just translates. I don't know how it does that, but it just translates to the reader. So just keep in mind that you can always switch up as needed.
Absolutely. I actually have a little side story about that specifically. So I was at a book signing event last weekend in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. It was my first like official book signing event. I had been to like other like markets and things like that prior.
Mhm.
This is my first official one with a bunch of other authors, so it was amazing to begin with. But you know, a lot of the people who came in to the event were all like, there's 70 tables, tons of authors, tons of books. You know, how do you choose? So a lot of people, their strategy I learned because I was talking to them, they would go through the whole room, check out everyone, and then go back and then buy their books based on the ones that stuck out to them, right?
Yeah.
And so surprisingly to me, I actually had several people, several different people in different groups come up to me towards the end and say, hey, like, I had to come back and buy your book because you were so passionate talking to me about it. Like, that's what stood out. It wasn't even necessarily that the story sounded good, which I mean, I'm dead, but like, you just seemed really excited and loved your book. Like, I just have to read what you wrote because you just seem so pumped. And a lot of other authors, because I walked around myself, you know, I had a few minutes breaks and lulls in between there. And I actually realized a lot of the authors there, like, not all of them, but some were just kind of, you know, checked out. You know, you can
Yeah.
tell I'm here because I feel like I have to be, not because I want to be.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And that's, I think, significantly impacted maybe some of their sales too, because I mean, people were literally coming back saying, I had to buy your book because you just sounded so excited and it sounds so cool. And,
Hmm.
you know, it's a good point
Yeah.
to make.
Yeah, definitely. And that's part of the marketing. You got to sell yourself, and it's hard because I feel like most of us are introverts. We're much more
Like we
comfortable.
hide behind our pens.
Yeah, absolutely. This is
Mhm.
this is my favorite place to be in the whole house, you know. And I don't want to go out there, but it's a very fun thing, Erica. Yeah, just to go out and talk to readers, find new readers, you know.
Yeah.
Um, that does get a little. I remember it getting a little bit tiring because like you do your whole spiel and they're like, okay, thanks, and they leave. And you're like, wow, I just spent like 5 minutes, and he was asking engaging questions and everything, and then nope, he left. He didn't want my book after all.
But they come back sometimes.
Sometimes
Or
they do. You're
they'll
right.
take like a bookmark or something. Like my bookmarks, I have QR codes on. So I'm
Yeah,
like, it could be a potential sell down the road because
that's
they
right.
took that information and decided to buy the ebook or something online. Because I mean, no one has the budget to buy 60 books in one sitting. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? So
right.
I get it. I get it. But yes, you do get repetitive. You hear yourself a lot, right? Like, oh, it's a Viking inspired no dormant.
Yeah,
But
Mhm.
like, it's worth it in the end because, you know, the one person or two people or however it really resonated with, you know, they'll come back or they'll find you online or
yeah,
whatever.
yeah. Yep. All right, excellent. So, what would be a piece of advice we can give new writers considering writing? I mean, there's so many different layers of writing, but like writing POVs, what would be something like, you know, I mean, Erica, or I'm sorry, Abson, and me, I'm gonna have an answer too, but just like, what would we tell them about writing
See, now I feel
different
like we're doing our
POVs?
don't section
No,
without doing
but
the
we're
don't
not.
section.
Yeah, we're not. This is not our closing segment. You're right.
It
You're
doesn't
right.
have to be a closing segment, but
Yeah, yeah,
I have some thoughts. I mean, I think the main thing is make sure it actually adds to the story, right? Don't just change a point of view just to have it because you think you have to or you think it might add to this, you know, to selling the book maybe overall. I think making sure you have a clear, authentic voice for that character. You know, they don't sound exactly the same when you're writing them, even if you labeled it, you know, it's this person versus this person. So I'd say have an authentic voice and make sure it actually adds to the story. Don't just do it to do it because you feel like you should.
mm, I like
hmm.
that.
Yeah, I'm gonna piggyback off that a little bit and say like, yes, for sure. Like I'm a big fan of labeling your chapters if you're gonna have a POV, but also like it should be clear that it's so distinct that like you don't need it technically. Like you should be able to tell who it is in the same way that like the way that people talk, you shouldn't have to label it with a speech tag, but it's still very helpful. So like everybody should speak this distinctly. They should see the world slightly differently and like the way that they describe things. So if you're taking a third person perspective or a first person perspective, like it still colors the narration. And so like if your person's a chef, they're going to talk about things differently than a mechanic is going to talk about things. So just keep all that in mind.
Okay. And then I would add that write what's natural for you. If it feels unnatural, it's going to be very difficult and very frustrating. And writing is already difficult and frustrating. You do not need another, I mean, like, because I do hear, we've all heard, oh yeah, I started writing a book and then I put it away because it was just so hard. Like, and now it's not going to get done. You know what I mean? So it's better for us to write what's natural, what feels natural. Now, to Austin's point, though, it is good for us to stretch our boundaries and try, challenge ourselves. Well, what would it look like if I did write, in second person,
or even different genres. Like if you normally write fantasy, like, you're talking about like writer's block. Well, like maybe put that away for a minute and go like, hey, I'm going to write like a mystery novel real quick and see, or well, not write a whole novel, but write a little bit, a short story or something.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. But just, it's, I feel like, probably, Erica, you probably, like, I think you said it best, like, well, everybody else is writing like this, so I'll just do it. I'll just follow along. And yeah, we get it. Like, sure, that makes sense. But if it's not you, then don't do that. So that'd be my advice.
Yourself and what you would want to read, like what you were saying, like write what you would want to read. And that's exactly the mentality that I had in my books. I was like, I wanted an adult cast. I wanted the main character to already be fierce in her own way, but still have some growth, and some weaknesses to overcome. And that's not always typical in romantasy. That's actually pretty much not. And like first person point of view is very typical. So I like to think of my book as a little bit more unique in that way, but not to the point where I'm like, oh, I'm just trying to be different. It's like, no, that was just authentically me. That is just what I wanted to read. And so that's how I wrote the book. And,
Nice.
Some people have resonated with it.
Good. Yeah, no, that sounds like a ton of people have resonated and more. This is just your first one. So just wait until you have like a backlist and now you're going to be blowing up, Erica. So that's fantastic.
I'm to buy for someone. That's my goal one day is like, they love them so much. They just instantly buy the next one.
Yeah, no, I swear to God, that's me. I mean, yeah, we're closing out. I'm picking up both of Embers because Viking fantasy, badass characters, morally gray. Shadow Daddy. Okay, I'll do that.
That's Bob's new favorite word.
I am totally gonna get a bumper sticker that I am a Shadow Daddy.
I heart Shadow Daddy.
I wonder if that's like Kylo Ren, right? Kylo Ren had to be a Shadow Daddy.
Yeah, he's definitely.
Yeah. The way she winks and yep, Kylo Ren. That's
I was gonna watch this and be like, what is she talking about? Don't worry about it.
That's hilarious, man. All right, so closing segment. We're going to change things up. We're going to ask our guests and ourselves if there is one person that you could, an author, writer, that you could pick their brain. You have an hour with them, alive or dead. Who would it be and why? Erica.
Okay, I'll start. Jane Austen.
Who? Jane Austen.
Jane Austen. So writer like Pride and Prejudice, Emma, Sense and Sensibility, all those great classics. She is one of like my first classic reads that I ever read a long time ago. And I would just I'd love to pick her brain on mostly like her strength at that time and that era. Like that was not normal for a woman to have a profession on her own and to make money and to, eventually become the staple that she is. I mean, a lot of great classic authors typically become really popular and gain that notoriety after they've passed. But she was actually gaining notoriety while she was still around and obviously long after. So I would love to pick her brain on just what gave her the confidence to just, at that time in that era, like that was like mic drop on our, at our level. That was like, hey, I'm going to do whatever I want to do and no one can stop me. And I just love that fierceness that she brought to what she loved and sharing her stories. And like in her stories, talking about things that were not popular during that time, like things that most people, you don't talk about that kind of stuff. No one talks about the controversies and the issues.
Right.
So yeah, just her boldness and how she, got to the point where she was actually publishing and selling those books. I would blow my mind to ask her those questions.
Nice. I like that. How about you, Austin?
So I think I'm gonna have to go with the classic AP English teacher answer for myself and go Dostoevsky.
Oh.
Um, so, which is weird because I write, epic fantasy, and that's very not what he wrote. But like the way that he handles character is so fascinating to me because he's writing stories about like Brothers Karamazov. It's small village in Russia 150 years ago, and like there is not a place on earth I could feel more removed from my day-to-day life, but still like I laugh out loud when I read about the characters. I like literally cry. Like all of these things, even though it's like so far removed from my life, and the way that he can handle that, like if I could do that better, I think that's a lesson that I would like to learn. So is the way to be more empathetic, I suppose.
Nice. Okay. And listening to everybody, I was just like, God, I almost went with Mary Shelley, and then I almost went with H.P. Lovecraft. I mean, there's just too many. But one of my favorite authors is Michael Crichton, and one of my very favorite books is The Great Train Robbery. And what he did, obviously, he Jurassic Park, and he had tons of stories that were kind of, they weren't fantasy based, but they're just fantastical. Science based, but it ran parallel. His stories ran parallel to facts. Like there could be dinosaur DNA. You know what I'm saying? But like, how do you keep those two things like perfectly aligned of fact and fiction? He was very, very good. That's what he did. That's real science fiction. Like you actually take
with the realm of feasibility.
Yeah, exactly. Time travel, like I said, the Great Train Robbery. I mean, just these things where you can write this absolutely amazing story, but yet it's grounded in science and facts. And I just find that balance just absolutely amazing. So I would love to have an hour with him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I was initially going to answer it with a joke and be like, I can't choose anybody that's dead because it wouldn't be a very good conversation. But
all right, Asa, you have the power of a necromancer. Okay, now you can bring it back.
Well, I'm sorry, but if I had the power of a necromancer, I don't know that bringing an author back is like my first priority.
Yeah, that's like your side hobby right there. It's like, maybe I'll bring one of the authors back.
A side hobby. God.
That's just more competition if you bring dead authors back.
Oh my gosh, can you imagine how upset the balance of everybody? Like, I don't even know if they'd be relevant anymore. I don't know. But anyway, I love these talks and the interviews. And Erica, you've been fantastic. I absolutely, we need to have you on again, especially when you come out with your next book. And especially this other. Hopefully, it's not too far down the road. But when you come up with your steampunk, Egyptian-based, I mean, that sounds flippin' amazing too. That's just I need another hour. Seriously, just talking about where do you get all this stuff? This is fantastic, man. All of it's just right on. Well, I hope you had fun though.
I did. This was really great. And getting to talk to other people about, topics like this. I don't have just authors in my life necessarily that I can just talk to on the daily. Like there's obviously people online that will have these conversations, but this is actually really nice to sit down and hash it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we do. Yeah. And it's going to be uploaded for the world to see. So that's even better.
No pressure.
Yeah. All right. Well, once again, Erica, where can our listeners find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on TikTok, Instagram. Those are kind of the main ones. If you just look up at Canney, Canney, you'll find me. And then again, in my profiles, I have my link trees that take you to everything else you'd want to know, where my books are, my website, all that good stuff.
Okay. Well, once again, it was lovely having you. Fantastic stuff. And I can't wait to read Oath of Embers. I seriously am going to order that right after we're done here. Wait, I can order an author's copy. Not an author's copy, a autographed copy.
You can.
Right? Okay. I'm going to do that. I'm going to order it from your website.
Awesome.
Yeah. All right, so folks, don't forget to subscribe to our channels at the links below so you don't miss any of the Writers Realm content. We always love to hear from our listeners, so if you have a question or topic you want us to dive into, please get in touch with us. I don't know what I was saying in that last sentence, but hopefully it made sense. Anyways, until then, take care. Bye.
Bye, y'all.